Hey there, it's Julio from Source, and I'm here with my stupid quarantine mustache to teach you 3 different ways of making CBD barbecue sauce at home. Alright, so first things first, the first ingredient that we're gonna need is some beer. Barbecue sauce making, it can be a little bit stressful, so having a beer at hand, it turns out to be life-saving. So we're not going to use it at all in our recipes, but it's good for you. So just have fun. Just have fun throughout this process. It's working. So calm down, okay? Just relax, all right? And let's have fun. Like I said, we're going to do 3 different recipes for this process. So we're going to start with the easy one. This barbecue sauce is going to be your textbook barbecue sauce. Very similar to the one that you get at the grocery store. We're not gonna get too crazy with it, but please keep in mind that these recipes that I have here, I've gotten from different places and I've tweaked and played around with them to make them what I like most and to have more ingredients that I like and less ingredients that I dislike. So feel free to tweak these recipes and to play around with them until you have exactly what you want. So this is by no means a grocery shop list of things that need to go into your barbecue sauce. So let's start with the first ingredient, which is 15 ounces or about 2 cups of crushed tomatoes. After that, we're gonna add about half a cup of white vinegar. Now, with vinegars, I've played around with several throughout this recipe, and I tried white wine vinegar, I tried apple cider vinegar, and we're gonna try different vinegars as we go into 3 different recipes, so don't feel like you have to pick any particular kind of vinegar. Like I said, we're gonna be playing around here, so go nuts. Next, we're gonna be doing 1/3 of a cup of honey. Next up, 1/4 of a cup of tomato paste. 1/4 of a cup of molasses. 3 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Next, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. We're gonna do 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half a teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt. And you know what? We're gonna make it a little bit spicier because I like that little bit of a kick. And we're gonna put a little bit of cayenne in it. Just a pinch of cayenne. Now we're gonna use a tiny whisk and we're gonna mix the whole thing up. Now we're gonna pour this into a stainless steel bowl. And we're gonna bring this to a boil with a lid on. And once it comes to a boil, we're gonna bring the heat down to low heat and we're just gonna let it simmer for about 15 minutes. Lastly, we're gonna take a good solid sip of our beer. And that's it, it's that easy. Now, a couple things to remember is that we're gonna be adding CBD oil to all these sauces at the very end. You cannot cook CBD because you quite literally cook it off. So you're gonna have to make sure that all 3 sauces, after they're done, they have some time to rest, come down to room temperature, and then you're gonna add the CBD oil into them and mix them. Additionally, if you're a vegan and you wanna veganize this sauce, you can. It shouldn't be that difficult. The only complicated part is replacing the honey. But I do believe that there are some replacements made out of apples that you can get on Amazon. They are a little bit harder to find, especially right now during the quarantine, but it shouldn't be a problem. Now, if you're a vegan, don't despair because our second kind of barbecue sauce is the vegan one. Now for this one, we're gonna start with 8 ounces of crushed tomatoes. Now, you could make this a little bit more complicated, but for the spirit of simplicity, we're gonna add 1 cup of ketchup. Now, for the sweetness of it, we're gonna add half a cup of molasses. Now, like I said, we're gonna experiment with different kinds of vinegars throughout these 3 recipes. So the next step is gonna be 2/3 of a cup of red wine vinegar. The beer's starting to kick in. Next, we're gonna do half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of onion powder, 1/4 of a teaspoon of cayenne, 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground pepper, 1/8 of a teaspoon of chili powder, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground mustard, and lastly, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. After this, we're gonna get our tiny whisk and we're gonna mix. Weirdly enough, this one smells a little bit more like your run-of-the-mill bottled barbecue sauce. It smells great. Like we did with the previous one, we're gonna put it on a stainless steel pot and we're gonna bring it to a boil first, and then we're gonna bring down the heat and let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. As you can see, this one's a little bit runnier than the previous one. Once it cooks and simmers for a while, as it cools off, it's gonna start thickening. All right, so now we're gonna do my favorite one, the gut-friendly one. The original recipe for this specific sauce came from Bon Appetit, but I've changed many things in the recipe. And my favorite thing about this recipe is the fact that we're gonna be using fermented ingredients, and then we're also gonna ferment the sauce. So we're gonna make sure that we're growing all sorts of friendly bacteria in the bottle, so that once we have it, we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff going on in our gut. So this is very much not your run-of-the-mill barbecue sauce. We're gonna do things a little bit different than what we did with the two previous ones. First thing is, initially the recipe called for kombucha, but you can use almost any fermented beverage that you want. If you have ginger beer, if you have chipotle, you can just replace it with whatever you want. I have been making ginger beer, as you can see my little fermentation station behind me, and I'm about ready to bottle it. So I'm gonna take advantage of the opportunity of just having it all ready to go here, and I'm gonna replace kombucha with it. Okay, we're gonna start with 2.5 cups of ginger beer or kombucha. Oh shoot, I forgot. We're not gonna mix this in a bowl. We're gonna mix this in the blender. Next, for the heat, we're gonna be adding 1 whole can Chipotle chili, 10 tablespoons of white vinegar, 2 tablespoons of salt. Interestingly enough, 2 tablespoons of ground coffee. I made this spoon. Next, we're gonna do a teaspoon, half a teaspoon. Let's do half a teaspoon of cocoa powder. 1/4 cup of tomato paste. It already smells amazing. It already smells great. Holy. Next, because we're in the spirit of keeping your gut flora super happy, we're gonna add some garlic, but instead of just throwing 4 cloves of garlic like that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna crush them with a knife. If you watch the Bon Appetit videos, then you've heard time and time again that garlic, it's almost like a 2-part epoxy. You crush it and then it mixes together and it starts releasing allicin. So it does that in the case that, you know, some animals started chewing on garlic, but allicin just helps your gut flora. It's the healthy part of garlic. So you want to make sure that you crush it before. So we're gonna give the garlic a minute while allicin is being released. In the meantime, we're gonna be adding half a teaspoon of pepper. And lastly, we're gonna be adding half a cup of molasses. And now we're gonna add the garlic that we had resting here. Now, next step would be bringing it to the blender. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind is just, we're gonna start on the slowest setting and then we're gonna move up to the fastest setting. Because of the noise, I'm gonna say it right now, once it gets to the faster setting, we're gonna pour in a little bit of olive oil, just a little bit, just to make it, oof. I don't know if you've noticed, but the ingredients of this one are very, very different from the 2 previous ones. So the 2 previous ones were kind of like different versions of each other, but this one is very, very different. However, we still have kind of like the main categories of ingredients in here. So we have the sweetness with the molasses, we have the tanginess with the vinegar, we have the spiciness with the different spices that we've used in the peppers, and lastly, we have the tomato nature of the sauce with the tomato paste in there. Other than that, we've added more beneficial things. You know, it's got, it's gonna be a pickup, it's gonna be good for your gut flora, it's gonna be delicious, and if you call now, we're gonna make sure that you get a second one for free. Okay, let's. Oh man, it smells awesome. I don't know if you noticed that this one hasn't gotten cooked, and it won't be. We have really, really good bacteria. They're good people. They're good individuals, those bacteria. Man, you should meet some of them. I'm gonna quit on that joke before I get too into it. But this has living bacteria in it, and we want to keep it that way. So we want to make sure that we don't cook it. It's kind of like the same principle as with the CBD oil into it. We don't want to cook it off. If you raise the temperature, you just kill all that bacteria. And I mean, I'm sure that it would still be good, but it wouldn't be as good for you, and it wouldn't be as delicious. It smells awesome. Let's taste it out. The taste is pretty incredible. Oh, it's got a kick, but it's not too spicy. I almost put a second chipotle pepper in there. I'm actually very glad that I didn't. It's really good. It's got a bit of an aftertaste kick to it, but it's really, really good. And the ginger, I'm pleased all the way around. All right, so the other two barbecue sauces seem to be done. I'm gonna take them off the heat, let them cool for a little bit before I add the CBD oil, and once they're cool, we're gonna put them in jars. In the meantime, I guess it's a good time to clean up. So like I said, these guys rested and cooled off, and now they're about ready to add the CBD oil into them. So I'm gonna put them in the jars first, and then I'm gonna use a spoon or a chopstick. A chopstick works a lot better to mix it up. I use a chopstick as well when doing sourdough feeding, and it just works great. Okay, it's not cool yet. Holy it burnt my finger. So it's gonna definitely need longer cooling. So look at the difference in all three of these. This is the easy one, this is the vegan one, and this is the gut-friendly one. Oh, they look so good, they smell amazing. And look at the like each one brings their own thing to the party, their own contribution. This one's a little bit more on the tomato side. Still great, if you ask me. It's delicious. It's got just the right amount of sweetness into it. This one, I would say at the end ends up tasting more like regular standard barbecue sauce. Like if you went to your farmer's market and you got barbecue sauce that was being sold by someone, I feel like this is what would get the closest to it. But this one, if I had to pick a favorite, this one would be, oh my god, yeah, this one would be it. It's just, it's a little bit runnier, which will thicken up, but the flavor's good. It's a little bit different, but it would be amazing on some ribs, which I can't eat, or pork chops, which I also can't eat. But you know, if you're a vegan, you can do plenty of things with these. You can barbecue a turnip. I'm kidding. No, there's tons of things that you can do. You can make seitan ribs. You can make jackfruit pulled pork sandwiches, which is a favorite here in this household. So there's tons of things that you can do with these, and they're delicious. So we're gonna let them cool off for just a second, and then we're gonna add the CBD oil to them. Okay, now these have definitely cooled down now. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add, I usually do about 3 dropperfuls. Dropperfuls. Don't be a dropperful, and add 3 droppers full. I have an accent, so I can make that joke because fool and full sound the same. I just realized it in my head. Okay. I'm gonna end up hurting a little bit for CBD oil after this because I'm using it in all three, which you'll only be using it in one unless you make all three, which be my guest. These all last about 3 weeks in your fridge. So just for starters, but this one in particular, we might rename it Julio's favorite. We might go from gut friendly to Julio's favorite. This one in particular, you can just keep. So what we're gonna do with this one, we're gonna put a cap on these and put them in the fridge, and then we're gonna use them on and off for the next month-ish. Obviously, you can freeze it. It's not my favorite because some of the liquids separate, but if you bring it back on the stove and do the same thing, you simmer it for a little bit, it goes back to absolutely normal. This one, however, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a cap on it, and we're gonna keep it in our fermentation station for another 3 days. We're gonna keep it fermenting, and then we're gonna put it in the fridge to stop the fermentation, or to slow it down at least, and then it can last a little bit longer. At the end of the day, you can make these very cheap to make. I realized that I had most of the spices already in my pantry, so I didn't have to buy many new ingredients. The ginger beer, the kombucha that you're using, the tepache that you're using, you can make all these for a few dollars. This honestly was maybe like $4 or $5 to make. So yeah, that's all. If you try them out, please let us know how it goes. This was super fun. It was super fun to just be cooking by myself, getting drunk here by myself in my kitchen. So I'm super interested in knowing what you think. If you want the full written down recipe, you can go to sourcecbdhemp.com, and we're gonna have it there as an article. And honestly, this was super worth it. We're gonna have a barbecue tomorrow, and we're gonna try it out in our balcony. So yeah, let us know how it goes in the comments. Let us also know if there's any other CBD recipes that you'd like us to try out and for me to experiment with here in my kitchen. And subscribe to this channel so that you're kept up to date with every single new video that we put out. And like this video if you can, because that's what YouTube wants us to do. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and have fun.